So, welcome to Independence and the Dharma. For anyone who might not have been here before, anyone who's watching the recording at another time, the way that we spend our time together is that, first I'll give you a little bit of basic information. I'll introduce myself. We'll spend some time in a guided meditation. And then we'll have a sharing time where I will offer my observations. And today I'm going to invite questions and sort of sharing sort of throughout the offering. But also at the very end, we'll have time for discussion, questions and answers, and everyone's own individual wisdom sharing. So right now this offering the gathering is being recorded, and I am going to pin myself, and that means that I will be the only person who is being recorded visually. So no one else will be seen on the screen in this recording aside from me. If there is a moment when there's something that someone who's participating live you want to share, and you don't want to have your words or your voice or your image recorded, I can pause the recording to allow that to happen. So I want to offer that introduction and sort of an identity statement. So I'm Laura, and I identify as a spiritual being who is incarnate in a body that the culture I live in racializes, sexualizes, disables, and applies other identities to. Today, I am wearing this wonderful t-shirt that I hope really helps to embody this principle of interdependence, showing linked hands and having words on it like kindness and generosity and the things that we need to be together. So as a visual description, I'm a racialized as white person of European descent. I have short hair. I'm wearing long glasses. I'm wearing the t-shirt I just described, and I'm sitting in front of a bright window on a bright sunny day. So a little bit more, though, I want to just reflect on my identity in terms of what I'm going to say today. I understand that everything that I believe I know or have learned has come to me through the portal of my body. And that's a limited portal through my body, my experiences, and the capacities that I have within myself to understand, digest, and interpret. So that means everything that I have as a learning that I might share with you is inherently ignorant because it's based on my perspective, what I have been able to understand. And that means at any time there may be something that I share that feels wrong to you, or doesn't fit for you, or feels incomplete. So at any time that you notice that that's how things are for you, I really invite you to affirm that, because your body, your capacities, your heart and mind are also valid portals for receiving and metabolizing information. And everything I say can't fit for everyone. So if something triggers you, you can turn off the audio, stop listening for a while. You can leave the meeting and come back. If you're watching the recording at a later time, you can pause and decide if you want to come back later. But the important thing is to know that you are affirmed and in whatever you're experiencing, and affirmed in caring for yourself. So, as I've just said, everything that I share as my learnings, I further want to acknowledge that this is all my metabolization, my understanding of wisdom that's come through many different wise beings over the centuries. And so it's important for me to acknowledge that while I may share certain words or thoughts that you haven't heard before, this has all come to me as a gift from other wisdom in other places and times. And today I specifically want to, I always want to offer gratitude to those beings. Today I want to specifically offer gratitude to all the wise and generous beings that have been participating in these gatherings with me. Because when I started doing this last September, I really wasn't sure how to do it, what I was going to do, how it was going to work. And there have been people that have really hung in with me and just sort of helped to see it through, helped me to learn how to do what I am doing. And I'm very grateful for that. I always want to offer gratitude to Sins Invalid, which is the cultivator of the 10 principles of disability justice. And, throughout the offering, I'm going to say the names of a number of other wise beings, and I always say their names with gratitude and appreciation. So, with that said, I'd like to go into our guided meditation period. I believe that the way that we approach meditation practice is just as important as how we perform meditation. So when we start our practice, we start by noticing how to prepare ourselves. And that has to start by noticing, well, where am I right now? Where am I in time? Where am I in space? Where am I in comfort? Where is my emotional state? What's my energy state? What's the state of my mind? Is it prepared to move towards silence and relaxation? And whatever the answers to those and other questions that might come to you as you prepare for meditation, whatever those answers are, just affirming the rightness of what your body says to you when you turn to it with the intention of moving into a meditation practice. If there's something that's required for your comfort so that you can be both alert and relaxed, give yourself an opportunity to try to satisfy that need. It might have something to do with the posture that you're in. It might have to do with needing a drink or needing to bend and stretch before you move into sort of stillness and silence. So please take good care of those things as you have the capacity to. And then beginning to allow your awareness to rest with your breath. However you are experiencing your breath now. Breath flowing in and out. Noticing where in your body you might most strongly feel the breath. Noticing its temperature, its depth, Noticing if breathing is easy or challenged, and affirming the rightness of whatever you're noticing. And expanding your awareness also to notice what I'll call the foundation in your body. It's whatever you're resting upon. If you're sitting, it might be a chair or a cushion, the floor, but your sit bones are in contact with something if you're sitting, and checking in with that foundation. If you're laying down, then whatever posture that you've assumed, that part of your body is in contact with something that is supporting you. Noticing the connections there, the support there, and accepting that support as part of the foundation for your practice. If you're engaging in walking meditation, then your feet are in contact with the surface. And the firm support of that surface, whatever that surface is like, smooth or rough, level or uneven, that is part of the foundation of your practice. So just noticing that the breath exists as an anchor that you can return to in practice. The foundation exists as an anchor that you can return to in practice. Just taking a moment in silence just to notice the qualities in the breath and in the foundation for you right now. Inviting gentleness to be part of your awareness, to be part of your practice. And as we move towards working with today's theme of interdependence, perhaps allowing your gentle awareness to rest on the interdependences in your body. Perhaps how your breath has a relationship and interdependence with your foundation. Perhaps however you've chosen to work with your eyes, either open or closed, has an interdependence with how you are receiving the practice right now. Noticing the heartbeat, temperature in the body, if your muscles feel tight or relaxed, and all the differences of qualities throughout the body. Noticing both those qualities and the interdependences among them. Taking a moment in silence to let that awareness arise in you. And if it's right for you, if your body is telling you it would like your awareness to continue to rest with it, and giving yourself permission to stay exactly there. And at the same time, I am offering an invitation to expand your awareness to begin to include your environment, whatever that means to you, how you are aware of being in space right now. That might mean perhaps a larger sense of whatever you're resting upon, whatever your foundation is in contact with. It might include an awareness of the larger surroundings of wherever you are located, the temperature in the air, any sounds that might be originating close to you or even farther, far away. And beginning to become aware of how this entire environment is supporting you in important ways. There's oxygen to breathe. There's shelter. There's the type of support that your foundation is receiving. Just noticing the sense in you that arises when I offer the word interdependence between you and your environment. And just allowing yourself to rest in silence with that for a moment. if it's right for you to remain in awareness of just your environment, your body in your environment, or even just your body, whatever your body's process is telling you, it's right for your awareness to stay. Allowing that to be what goes forward. And just hearing this next invitation and testing if this is right for you, to expand your awareness to include this virtual space that exists between us. And some of us are here in this live virtual space where the recording is being made, and others of us are in the virtual space of listening to the recording at a later time. Just noticing how support is offered, is available in this virtual space that exists between us. And if it's right for you, just considering if it might be right to just perhaps turn your palm up so that it's open. And if you might invite someone who is present in the virtual space, someone that you would like to call in to the virtual space, if you would like to invite someone to gently place their hand in your upturned palm, so that in our virtual space we create a circle where we are linked together in gentle care, in mutual aid, in care and trust that what we are each individually is worthy, is beautiful, and has capacities and wisdom that are valuable for each other and in the world. And allowing yourself a few moments to breathe silently in wherever you most comfortably feel in this different kinds of support that we've called into this meditation. Slowly allowing your breath to deepen, listening to your body and your body's process, noticing whatever it is your body is calling for now. It might be gentle movement, stretching, yawning, bending over, might be having a drink. Whatever it is your body is calling for now, if it's within your capacity to provide that, allowing that to go forward. And as you are ready, if your eyes are closed, opening your eyes, allowing your body to re-enter the space that exists when we are outside of meditation. So welcome back, everyone, and thank you so much for practicing with me. So we are at that part of today's gathering where we will have a comfort break. So in a moment I'm going to stop the recording and I'm going to play some music for us. And at this time I invite everyone to do whatever it is that is needed to care for your bodies and for yourself in your entirety. So welcome back, everyone. I hope that you were able to benefit from that break. And that was what I played for you was a song with a lovely interdependent title called "Where Can I Go Without You?" And it was played by two beings, one of my very favorite jazz musicians, Keith Jarrett, who had a long career starting in the 60s or 70s and was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome in the 1990s and was unable to play for long periods of time. He had 2 strokes in 2018 and he's been completely unable to play since then. And he was playing with Charlie Hayden, who has now left this world, but who lived with post-polio syndrome and liver disease. So 2 disability justice family members. So the principle that we are here to inquire about today is interdependence. And I have placed the text of that principle in the chat. It reads, "We meet each other's needs as we build toward liberation, knowing that states' solutions inevitably extend into further control over lives." And as always, I'd like to start with words, and today I particularly want to look at some words in this principle, words that are underlined in what I just shared with you in the chat. So the first word is need, and that came to us through the Old English, a word spelled N-E-D, as well as other Eurasian words that had a meaning or a connotation of requirement or necessity or even distress and danger. But what's interesting to me, or part of what's interesting to me, is that that word N-E-D may have been commingled in the Middle English period with another word, N-O-E-D, that meant desire or longing. And that's interesting to me because today we see the word being used interchangeably, like I need some ice cream or I need a ride to the airport. They're completely different things, right? One might be a desire, and the other might be an actual requirement for accomplishing some activity that you're undertaking. So, I like to give definitions, but for our purposes today, I'd like to maybe just express what a statement of need, because I think there are many different potential things that could be needs, but for us today, I'm going to say that a need is it's something that my humanity requires as conditions necessary for satisfying basic daily activities, and that includes things like rising, dressing, and interacting with others, as well as requirements like sheltering, toileting, eating, healthcare, and resting. And these things are all required just by my state of humanity. So I'm including that in the chat, the statement I just read, and of course all these sort of definitions and reflections are always included in the blog that I post after we complete this gathering. So another word that I wanted to examine in that principle is liberation, and that comes directly from Latin, from a word liberationem, which basically means like a setting free or becoming free. But as it went through English, it also took on meanings of not in bondage, which I think we're all familiar with, but also it had connotations of something that was noble, free and noble, joyful, and even through a relationship to a German word, love, something that is beloved. The phrase state solutions, that just, it means, an answer or a way of solving a problem that is provided by or concerned with the mechanisms of a civil government or a country. But we're also familiar that that solution can also be used like in chemistry. And in etymology, that's really where the word comes from, in this concept of something like a dissolving, a loosening, something that is unhooked or unfastened. And for me, that really relates to things that we were saying last month about manas, as well as things that I included in my blog post about manas from last month's gathering. And how when you pull hard on something, you might tighten it, but that to release it or free it or liberate it, you need to dissolve and to loosen. And I also wanted to look at that word, that one word that is the name of the principle this month, which is interdependence. So it has a sense of mutuality, something that is reciprocally given and received. And it also has connotations of like reliance, like something you can rely on, interdependence, that as we are reciprocal, we are also depending. So I have a definition that I want to provide for Sangha is all purposes in working with this principle, just of the word interdependence, which again I'm placing in the chat. And that is, interdependence is the reciprocally given reliance upon and confidence that the conditions necessary for satisfying basic daily activities like rising, dressing, and interacting with others, and requirements like sheltering, toileting, eating, healthcare, and resting will be created and maintained by our community. Because there's a relationship between the need and the interdependence surrounding the need. So, and you all know that we also look at Eightfold Noble Path elements every month. And this month I'd like to look at Samavaka. So Sama always means right. And for our purposes, we are defining right as being in alignment with the true nature of reality. And Vaka is really simple. It literally does come down to us through Sanskrit as simply the word speech. So in the translations that we see of Samavaka, right speech, that is very literally the principle as it was articulated in Sanskrit. But what I want to say about that is that, in order for us to exist in interdependence with each other, in order to speak wisely and voice and create ourselves wisely, that we must consciously use our speech, whether through our voice, whether through our actions or some other means, including words and actions that we choose to withhold, to aim towards balance with and support of the true nature of reality. So when I sent the email out for this month, I indicated that we'd be looking more deeply at intersectionality and interbeing in the context of interdependence. So the question is, how do we arrive at reciprocally given reliance upon and confidence that the conditions necessary for satisfying basic activities and requirements will be created and maintained by our community? Because in the principle that's articulated by Sins Invalid, they're negating state solutions. And this alone, as well as all the other work that we know Sins Invalid does, and the words that we've investigated, this is a calling in of both individual and community solutions. Community. So all of this points to both individuals and communities. So I want to look at that in terms of first intersectionality. We talked about that in our very first gathering because there's a principle articulated just around intersectionality, which is that we do not lead single issue lives. And also in the email leading up to this gathering, I provided a link to Kimberly Crenshaw's YouTube on intersectionality. I've just placed that in the chat. And in that YouTube, she tells how the story of how she first started out on what became sort of a long journey to develop this concept of intersectionality when she heard the story of an African American woman who brought a lawsuit against a car manufacturer because she was denied employment. And Emma was an African American woman, and the court denied her claim because they said that she couldn't get two swings at the bat, that she had to prove that she was denied employment either as an African American or as a woman. And because there were African Americans employed and there were women employed, the court said it would be two swings of the bat to hear your claim. And in this YouTube, Kimberly Crenshaw said she saw that as like just crazy, the most just outrageous refusal to really understand the true circumstances of what was happening. She calls this, she uses some really great turns of phrase like trickle-down social justice, and refers to the multiple levels of social injustice that are created when a person is not treated in respect and consideration for their multiple identities. When the facts, as in this case of Emma de Graffenried, do not fit the frame, as in you have to be either African American or a woman, but you can't be both. What? Then people have a different time incorporating new facts into their way of thinking about a problem. And so she created a new frame called intersectionality that represents the ways in which multiple identities appear in individuals. In September, I offered a word or a modification of Buddhist teaching on the experience of how that happens. So in Buddhism, we have a first era, which is an objectively difficult or painful experience, like breaking your foot, which I did this month. And the second arrow is your reaction or response to it. And I don't know about you all, but there have been many times in Buddhist communities where I have felt as though my need to express what was happening to me in the world because of my disabilities, that this was treated as a second arrow, when in fact I'm just like Emma de Graffenried. I'm in the world and I have disabilities, and both are valid. So I created this third principle of the third arrow, which is the experience I have when that refusal to include my intersectional identities in whatever context we're working with, whether it's Buddhism or a classroom, or if it's access into a grocery store, or as a friend of mine has frequently pointed out, the difficulty of being able to use Uber when you're a wheelchair user because you don't necessarily get support getting your wheelchair into an Uber. So the source of the third arrow is in the community. It's a community problem when my intersectional identities are not recognized and respected in community. And so for interdependence to exist, the community needs to use a frame like intersectionality in order to treat me as a whole being, not as a disabled person, but as a valid and whole being. And last month, we talked about interbeing, which is a phrase that Thich Nhat Hanh has developed. Because we did talk about it so much last month, I'll just reiterate that he said the verb to be can be misleading because we cannot be by ourselves alone. To be is always to interbe. We inter-are with one another and all of life. This phrase that I've just quoted appears in his book, The Art of Living, on a chapter or a subsection of a chapter called The First Door of Liberation. Liberation that appears in this principle on interbeing. So Thich Nhat Hanh, in articulating this principle, he's very, very explicitly saying, in order to be free, we need to understand and respect how we inter-are with everything that lives. The Zinju Earthland Manual says something very similar in the way of tenderness. She says, there are many possible meanings or experiences of spiritual liberation as it emerges from within. I experience it as freedom from projections of superiority or inferiority among sentient beings. To experience liberation in such a way is to experience authentic compassion, wisdom, love, and interrelationship. So again, much the same thing. So just to return to this month's principles, we could then say that the way we meet each other's needs to be fueled by awareness that we do not lead single issue lives, which is intersectionality. And as Sebene Selassie says it, although we are not one, we are not separate. And as though we are not separate, and although we are not separate, we are not the same. So interbeing. And because of this, it's especially important for disabled folks that when we care for ourselves, we know that we care for each other. And in today's political environment, this can be said another way, when we support others to care for themselves, we care for ourselves. So there's this really wonderful talk that I'm going to place a link to the YouTube of in the chat between a disabled yoga teacher and an Irish storyteller about stories. And so Claire Murphy is the storyteller, and she said, we need stories as a way of contemplating human existence, because when we only look at the individual, when we only look at ourselves, it's too small. It's like looking at a microbe through a massive microscope. We're looking at the drop of water as compared to the ocean. And when you look at the ocean, it gives your psyche more breathing space. This calls for stories that support interbeing, that support intersectionality and interdependence, and invite an awareness that the stories we tell ourselves and others are crucial to our liberation. And this perhaps is why Shakyamuni was such a storyteller. And then on this same topic of story, I want to link this. It feels very linked in me to, to what Malidoma Patrice Sommet says about ritual. Ritual is an active story. When we engage in ritual, we are creating a story in that moment. And it has elements that, if we're designing a ritual of care, it has elements of beauty and support, and it has an intention of carrying forward, calling in health, calling in wholeness and interconnection. So in indigenous cultures, there was active storytelling all the time. Active storytelling that called in those elements that are really essential for the building of community, the building of wholeness and health and a sense of belonging. And today we don't engage in that. We engage in rituals of disconnection that send us away from other people into our little isolated streams of social media and YouTube and all the things that we do repetitively that are the drop and not the ocean. So I want to pause here for a second and invite any questions or sharing about how interdependence, how anything I've said resonates with you, anything new that comes for you, or how you feel that interdependence might include intersectionality and interbeing. And if you prefer not to have your words recorded, just let me know and I will pause the recording.
Well, hi, thank you, Laura. Um, this is relevant to me in terms of air. We all breathe the same air, right? But it became with the pandemic, air kind of turned into a political issues, and my individual right to not wear a mask, but we're breathing the same air, and I'm running into it with okay, 12-step meetings. I don't know if you'd call addiction people who identify as addicts. It's not really a disability, but it's a whatever certain kind of identity. And when I'm, this particular meeting that has no ventilation, or I caught COVID and I'm still, and they're friendly and they're like, "Oh, we have such a beautiful community and we love each other," but and they're going out to eat and I'm like, "Where are you eating, inside or outside?" Probably inside. It's just I'm really struggling with the fact that because of like capitalism, the conversation about like safety and health is kind of, you have to really be a what's the word? To advocate, it's all on the individual, to advocate for access, and just it's just so strange all of a sudden it's become this like the elephant in the living room and then denial, like so, yeah, it's certainly a lot of this definitely resonates with me thinking about, we all share the same air. That's the most basic element of interbeing, when you're physically in the same space. And, just what a great job the ruling class has done. What a good job you did, that now I'm in this position where, it's just like that the kind of, at the beginning of the pandemic, at least there was an attempt at community care and masking and testing. Well, I guess what Biden did say, the pandemic is over. So that was kind of like the official pronouncement. Okay. And I've seen it compared to HIV, like the way HIV AIDS was, treated, when it first was, started to really, it affected marginalized communities. So there was this, oh, well, it just, affects those people. It's not really. And it finally, how many years it took for, finally treatments were developed and there was more awareness of it, maybe as something that can affect everybody. So it's definitely been an instructive, lots to, yeah, a learning about my own, just ableism in general and how, our society, views, illnesses. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. One of the reasons that I put forth this sort of statement on need is because I really wanted to call in that needs include, for instance, healthcare. How I am able to take care of myself because it is being capitalized away from a right or a need or a requirement. And I guess for me, addiction is a process that's happening in the body. And for me to say that I get to uh, honor person A's process in the body because of how that process originated versus person B who has a process in the body because I don't like how that process originated is like it's the opposite of the two swings of the bat. It's like taking the bat and dissecting it down into little teeny tiny shards to where you can't hit anything with it anymore. Astrid, go ahead, please. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Okay. I never know whether I'm actually sorry. I never know whether I'm using my earphones or what's happening with the audio. Um, yeah, I'm sort of echoing a bit of what you said, Amanda. Yeah, I've been sort of angry all morning. Really, just kind of thinking I'm gonna have to take on this big institution, like this colonialist, like imperialist, capitalist university um, around like neuroableism. And yeah, I was just thinking like, why am I doing? I'm doing this all on my own, and why am I all on my own? And just like raging around the place, and I didn't know where to put my anger, and then I put on a kind of I guess it was a interview by a therapist who's kind of really an activist and a writer. Um, Yeah, and she was just kind of talking about, I guess she was talking about, um, yeah, I guess she was just talking about kind of confronting like institutions almost like subversively, like not like sort of like this, but really, I guess creatively, really, like just like subverting ideas and just kind of it was. I mean, she's a therapist, so she was talking about Freud, but actually, Freud put out something, but she's going to look at it this way because she's a black woman and a feminist. So, um, and I just felt instantly. I was like, I just felt instantly so much better And I like try to work out like what happened to the anger and you know, and I don't even know if that like yeah, I think also looking at her makes me think of interbeing. I think that's what she does. Like she will reach out to therapists, Lebanese therapists who are living in Virginia, for example. I mean, she lives in the UK, so she's not just like speaking and writing and practicing in her circle. She's like reaching across the Atlantic, and I don't know a whole lot of people. I know like black feminists do that, but I don't know really a lot of folks who in the diaspora who are doing that. I know that like Thai Colors of Compassion, they have a UK based people of color sangha, and they do that. But maybe that's just because we have to as people of color. But um, I think also it's not a given that that happens, and I guess that's my sadness and my anger, like because I feel like I'm so isolated doing this work, like advocating for myself and hopefully for like people who come after me so that they don't have the same experience in this university that's like in Australia. So it's like, how do you even, and maybe then I kind of I'm thinking like, this is impossible. Like, I can't do this on my own, and maybe I have to think about it, even though I'm like cynical about the whole, at this moment, about the whole kind of, when you're talking about the sins and invalid uh, principle about just ensuring that we all have what we need. Um, and yeah, correct me if that's completely wrong, but um, I think that kind of requires like contact with people, if we're gonna do that. And I'm not
Yeah.
sure yeah. And I mean, I know I have a part in that. You're talking about the isolation of like the silos that we can get into. But then it's like Amanda's like reminding me like, but that's by design, like that is by design. It's like, and we need to like push back on that because that's not about this person or that person who didn't call you or like check in on you. It's like we're all buying into drinking this Kool-Aid of like isolation and
Yeah.
silos and individuality, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's like yeah, I think that all of that just kind of calmed me down over the past between this mentor of mine and this space and the whole idea of like interbeing and
Yeah.
interconnectivity. Just kind of it feels like, oh, it's not such a big burden then to kind of do the pushback because I'm not having to do it on my own.
Yeah.
And I do assume that no one's going to help me somehow. Like I do just kind of make that assumption, like there's nobody there and no one's going to help me. And I'm just, and it's like, oh, where did that come from? Like, you know,
Yeah.
so yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's probably what the system would love us to think, that there's no one that's coming, that's going to be in your corner. So anyway, yeah, thank you.
We'll talk some more about that in a moment. Zach, you have your hand up.
Yeah. First of all, I wanted to say I think it was for the passage of the ADA. Could have been something else, but one of the reasons it was delayed is that the government did not want to include people with addiction in that, and that the people who were building it and stuff did not feel that that was acceptable, and so they fought for that. Um, and then I just sort of wanted to say, because you mentioned Story, that how much Story has really supported me, and I read a lot of books. I would say mainly memoirs, but also just sort of about um, disability politics and stuff, and how much that changed for me this feeling of isolation around being disabled and things that I always kind of felt like were isolated experiences, and then realized that they were really not that rare. Um, so yeah, the story has been so powerful for me in the past several years in terms of interdependence and connecting with others.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I guess maybe I want to just sort of, I feel like some of what I want to share next has connections with what has been said. So maybe I'll just share, and we can, and with more opportunity for conversation. So we talked a bit about manas last month, but then there was something new that I shared in the blog, or something additional that I shared in the blog that I want to read to you now. Our manas are natural. Our manas are natural. And I don't want to read the whole passage because it's really long, but I explain how that is too, if you want to read the blog from last month. Our manas are natural because they rise organically from our bodies, our capacities, and experiences. The natural arising of manas is part of what underlies Shakyamuni's first noble truth, that life involves suffering. While manas arise naturally, excuse me, as Thich Nhat Hanh teaches, they are not always good for our long-term survival. Excrement also arises naturally from our bodies, but when excrement arises, we do not keep it around. Excuse me just a second. So we are both glad that excrement arises because we need to dispose of waste from our bodies. And we need to dispose of waste in order to maintain our health. But we also know that wallowing in it will create unhealth, so we dispose of it. Manas are like the excrement of the human frontal lobe. They arise naturally. They're part of what comes with this crazy big frontal lobe thing. They may even serve a purpose. You know, Sebene Selassie and other teachers called manas comparing mind. So they may help us to learn the differences between supportive and unsupportive, healthful and unhealthful, kind and unkind. And once we have learned, we need to keep the learning and dispose of the manas. Sebene Selassie asks, how do we acknowledge differences and inequities, yet also hold a firm conviction that fundamentally we are all irrevocably interconnected and belong to each other? So this, in my voice, I am now saying, this is the paradoxical work of holding both, of processing the reality in this relative world that we are both supported and unsupported, loved and unloved, protected and unprotected, in such a way that our body and mind can find ease. Everyone who has spoken just now has talked about ways in which there is that third arrow that's attacking us, or we are observing it attacking others. For instance, in the example Zach gave about attempts to exclude protections for addiction as a disability from the Americans with Disabilities Act, that was a third arrow directed at people with addictions. And what happened in that case was interdependence was recognized by the disability justice advocates that were working for the passage of the ADA. And they said, no, you're not going to cut off pieces of our community. We're going to stand together. So I just want to say, because I think it's kind of fun, the Beatles said it as, I am he, as you are me, and we are all together. So this shows up everywhere, right? This shows up in music, it shows up in Buddhism, it shows up in stories from ancient Greece, it shows up everywhere. Someone we've called in before, Audre Lorde, in the Cancer Journals, she points to this when she says, I am defined as other in every group I am part of. The outsider, both strength and weakness, having that intersectional identity of being the strength that she was as Audre Lorde and the weakness that cancer represented. Yet, she goes on, without community, there is certainly no liberation, no future, only the most vulnerable and temporary armistice between me and my oppression. And last week I called in Robert A. Johnson, who's a Jungian and also a student in Eastern mindfulness traditions. And he says, for some incomprehensible reason, we often refuse the paradoxical nature of reality. Personal suffering begins when we are crucified between opposites. The third arrow. If we try to embrace one without paying tribute to the other, we degrade paradox into contradiction. Yet both pairs of opposites must equally be honored. To suffer one's confusion is the first step in healing. So I am calling all of this as holding both. And sometimes both doesn't mean two. Both can mean holding it all. But particularly what Robert Johnson is saying is be in relationship to paradox. Drop contradiction. Contradiction is where I'm in comparing mind that says one has to win over the other. They can't both exist. Or one has to be better than the other. They can't be equal. Or you can't be black and a woman in the same place, like Emma DeGraffenreid, read, and have rights. You can't be both and have rights. That's contradiction. And that's a recipe for insanity and isolation. And while we cannot pretend that we live in a world that doesn't continually try to impose this contradiction and shoot these third arrows, we can give ourselves strength and healing and hold out the opportunity for ourselves and to others of moving forward into paradox, into holding both, into finding a healthful, whole way of valuing our needs in terms of our activities and our requirements. When we allow ourselves to at least begin to invite comfort. In our culture, we've been trained in contradiction, which creates discomfort, because I have to choose something. And if I choose the wrong thing, it might be bad for me or for someone I love. But paradox is about choosing comfort with difference, holding both, allowing it all to exist. So I really want to give us as much sharing time as possible around all of this. So that's all I'm going to say, at least for the moment, and just invite any questions or comments or sharing around that. Well, if there's no other, excuse me, no other questions or comments, I guess what I want to do is just offer maybe one other quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, and we can actually move into any sort of discussion or even just ending early today for a change. So Thich Nhat Hanh says, the truth is that suffering and happiness are, and both are impermanent. So I want to be really clear that when I say suffering, I mean when my mind state around something that is objectively painful or difficult, when my mind state heightens it as opposed to holding it so that it can flow through and be impermanent. Difficult and painful things happen. And yes, we suffer from them in the sense that they hurt, or they require effort, or they wear us out, or we don't have access to whatever the tool is I need to solve the problem. Their difficulty is legitimate. When we resist it as though it shouldn't exist, that's the type of suffering that Shakyamuni was talking about. And in his time, the world wasn't as complicated as it is today. So I'm not angry with him for not having the concept of a third arrow. We have to have it today because we've created it. And we have a lot more strength and resilience in facing third arrows when we recognize, oh, wait a minute, lots of other people are experiencing this when we're interdependent, when we rely on each other, even if that means I don't have the tool I need, and maybe nobody that I'm interdependent with has the tool, but at least they can help me to relax a little bit and let it flow through to see if I can figure something else out, rather than allowing my mind state to create more difficulty that's unnecessary. So that's really all I've got for us today. I'm so glad that everybody was able to join. I want to suggest that maybe what we could do is dedicate the merit of our practice, and then anybody who would like to leave can leave, and anybody who'd like to stay for some discussion either on the topic or on anything else at all, because we're just a community here together, we can stay for a little bit longer. So I would like to suggest that we dedicate the merit of our practice today to understanding the strength that we represent simply by being together. And when I say that, when I say we, I mean everyone who is here and everyone who is watching this recording, whether they're watching it tomorrow or next year. We are we. We are together, and we represent a strength. When we understand how we can come together with our differences, because our differences are what make us the same, then we can truly practice supportive interdependence. May we all recognize the strength that we are, the strength that we help to create, and the beauty and the wisdom that we have to contribute in the world. May all of this, whether through our direct actions or simply through our breath, help to support the healing, the wholeness, the liberation and freedom of all beings in every place and every time. May all of this be so. Thank you so much for practicing with me today. I am going to stop the recording.